So while the rest of the country was celebrating America's birthday on the 4th of July, Tucker Carlson was putting together the last edits of his most recent interview with none other than Mr. Death to America himself, or at least Mr. Death to America Jr., since the Ayatollah would be senior, the president of Iran, or at least the current president of the Iranian regime that is currently oppressing the Persian people. Now, I happen to believe that Tucker has every right to interview anybody he wants to interview. He can say what he wants to say, believe what he wants to believe. I am a believer in the First Amendment. I have the right to espouse my nonsense ideas as you have the right to espouse yours. Simple as that. And hopefully the truth will bubble up to the surface and dominate the conversation. But I just want to take a moment to check out this trailer in real time, or at least his announcement of this interview. And then we're going to do a breakdown because, though I have my own speculations and perspectives, after tying some threads and even doing a video not too long ago where I really questioned what are his motives, I feel like we're getting closer and closer to where this man actually is. But without a further ado, let's get into it. Wait, might want to actually bring up the video. Might help. Okay, let's get into it.
We just finished up an interview with Masoud Pezeshkian, who is the president of Iran, the 70-year-old heart surgeon who leads the country we were just at war with about a week and a half ago. We know
I'm sorry. I can't just let the nonsense slide. This is a part of my own First Amendment right. But before we get into that, let me handle this. All right. Tucker Carlson was either deeply misinformed and essentially made his misinformed perspectives known to the rest of the world, or he lied when it came to what happened between the United States and Iran specifically. There was no war with Iran. What happened was we took out their nuclear facilities. The end. Now, Tucker was one of these individuals, much like Candace, much like Dave Smith, the Haji twins, and the rest of these individuals who continue to push this narrative of, we're not going to war for Israel. First of all, nobody asked you to go to war. Candace had this video where she was sitting with Pierce Morgan, another one of, I guess, these flip-floppers, and she was essentially stating how she would be okay with her kids going to jail for 5 years instead of serving in the army. The oldest of Candace's kids, I believe, is like 4 or 5 years old. This is basically the quote-unquote woke rights version of virtue signaling, right? Yeah, I'm not down for Israel. I'm not down for Israel either. Guess what? Nobody asked you to. Nobody. They're always dragging us into a war. Which one? Name one. I'm yet to hear one war that we were dragged into, that we fought on behalf of Israel for. I'm waiting. But anyway, back to this point here. Yeah, that is a blatant lie. And it's going to be one of those videos where we break things down at a molecular level. So if you're not down for that, you can go ahead and just watch the video by itself. But that's what we're here for. We're here to investigate.
criticized for doing this interview. Why did we do it anyway? Well, we did it because we were just at war with Iran 10 days ago and maybe again. And so our view, which has remained consistent over time, is that American citizens have the constitutional right and the God-given right to all the information they can gather about matters that affect them. If their country is doing something with their money.
By the way, I don't know if you guys saw the video, but when Tucker receives the news for the first time that those facilities were bombed, he puts on his little act. That's one thing I can say about Tucker. What I get from him is there's a disingenuous energy there. You know, it's not just the it's not just the laugh. There's something that is deeply, you have passive aggressive people, and then you have people who, I think there's an element of people pleasing that's mixed in there somewhere, where they genuinely want to come off like, hey, I'm your best friend. It's that Jimmy Fallon-esque sort of energy, right? He laughs a little too hard at things that aren't really that damn funny, if funny at all. Puts on when you're in his presence, and then when he is trying to essentially debate you, instead of being upfront like what we saw with Ted Cruz, It's, oh, so you don't even know the population of the country that you want to go to war with? I'm just asking questions. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. And maybe that's just a personal preference, but I'm not into that. I like when people just tell you straight up, right? Like if you don't like somebody, just say it straight up. I don't like those people. I respect you for that. I may not vibe with you. I may not like you, but I respect you. And that's been the hardest thing. But back to the point at hand is, again, he continues to push the narrative. And I guess this is specific to his own audience of we were at war with Iran. We were not at war. However, what is true is that there is a current fatwa that is on the United States president's head. That is something that hopefully is going to come up in Mr. Tucker Carlson's latest interview. Now, for those who don't know what a fatwa is, it essentially is a call to assassinate or eliminate somebody that is called by none other than the Ayatollah and his regime. So, and actually, I first saw this on Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm when the guy didn't completely and absolutely lose his mind to TDS. But I remember when, Larry had the fatwa on him, and essentially everywhere he went, he had to watch his back because anybody could be one of these quote unquote sleeper cells that essentially take his life. There is one of those on President Trump right now from the Iranian regime. Tucker is going to be sitting across from this man. And the problem I've had in times past with Tucker is that he will go hard on those he claims to be on the same team with, which I don't mind, but he will sit across from, the dictators across the planet and give them softball questions. Like what I genuinely expect is, I was wondering, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream? That's the type of questioning I'm expecting here. It's not going to be, deep theological questions. What is your actual ideology? What do you guys actually believe? And is this belief system not dangerous? It's interesting. There's this narrative that, to call out Israel is like this huge taboo. If you go on X right now, there are more tweets per second or expos per second that are going off on Israel in the same way that Trump or America has been getting it for the last 10 years. People do not stop criticizing America or Israel. As soon as you start talking about Islam or any of those regimes, the Islamic Brotherhood, watch what happens. Watch. So go to one of those countries and speak down on their regime. Go to Israel and speak down where people are consistently, perpetually. America, the absolute worst. All people do is talk down on their own government. I happen to come from a country, Zimbabwe, where if you spoke down on the government, there is a likely chance that you might end up in the back of a van and you will never see your family again.
In their name, they have a right, an absolute right to know as much about it as they can. And that would include hearing from the people they're fighting. Now, can you believe everything you hear from the president of Iran? Probably not. But that's not the point. The point is you should be able to decide for yourself whether you believe it or not.
I agree.
And keep in mind that anyone who seeks to deny you that right is not your ally, but your enemy. By the way, we have also put in for the third time in the last several months an interview request with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and we hope he accepts that. The interview is limited by a couple of factors. One, it was done by remote through a translator. That's always awkward. For another, I don't speak Persian. And there are all kinds of questions that I didn't ask the president of Iran, particularly questions to which I knew I could not get an honest answer.
Go figure. Now, I am going to address the Netanyahu situation. Again, I am not a man who voted for Netanyahu because I'm not an Israeli citizen, right? I know as much about him as anybody else does outside of the context of Israel. I voted for Trump because I know mostly who that man is by what he has done in times past, right? So I'm not this Netanyahu, biggest fan. I am a fan of humanity, which means I stand for what Western civilization endorses and pushes throughout the world. I do. I know that it is not perfect, but most of it has been essentially globally impacting, life-changing for many people. It has mobilized many people out of poverty. The Western way of living. I'm just going to put it that way, unapologetic about that. But it's interesting how he says that, well, there are questions that I simply could not ask because I wouldn't get a genuine. See, here's the thing. Anytime you sit across from anybody and you're looking to have a genuine sort of interrogation per se, style interview in the way that he has, and I've seen he has the ability to do when it is, again, the likes of a Ted Cruz, the likes of somebody who he's trying to get a gotcha moment out of, somebody who is easy to kind of pick at because you know you're not really going to get that much backlash. Isn't it interesting that there are going to be questions that are simply not asked because I won't get an honest answer? No, your job is to push for those honest answers if you are this so-called honest journalist. Now, Tucker is one of the most cunning individuals. And I said this in a video I put out prior, but I kind of want to get deeper into what I meant by that. I mean that he has this ability to come off as everything is just journalistic integrity. That's all we're doing here. He would almost have you convinced that he is not a propagandist who has a very specific stance. And no, that stance is not just America first. Let's get real. Because when it comes to defending America, he is sparing. When it comes to pushing forward an idea that he has in his own mind, because again, there's a part of me that I just can't help but believe that this guy who is so adamant about Israel, but oftentimes stands on the side, or at least is more in favor of those who are the adversaries of Israel, as well as America, because again, we are the big devil, right? Israel's a little devil, we're the big devil. It's not just death to Israel, it's death to America. It's just interesting to me how Tucker is, he'll sit across from the ruler of Qatar, he will visit the UAE, and he will have these light and airy-fairy sort of temperaments with these individuals. He's chilling when it comes to them. I have a hard time believing that he is not in relationship with them and may not even be one of the influencers who is being funded. And again, I know it's an easy place to go to. That's what I'm being accused of on a daily basis now, because I'm actually speaking honestly about this Israel situation as opposed to hiding, behind closed doors and pretending nothing is going on. But that's just, again, it's interesting to me. So again, I have not watched the interview. Maybe this is, the greatest piece of journalism ever done. But if it looks anything like what I've seen in times past, Tucker Carlson actually has an agenda. All of us do. We all have a bias on what we stand on. I will tell you exactly what I stand for. God, family, and essentially work, right? Production, creation, capitalism, free market, etc. These are principles in my life that will never deviate. Simple. So this postmodernist mentality, this Marxist sort of mentality, tear the entire system, I'm not with that. I am conservative in much of my value system. The only place I am quote unquote progressive is progressing my ass further and further away from the Democratic plantation, to be honest. So I have my biases. This man claims to be America, America, America first. But it seemingly seems as if it is either somebody else first or just Tucker Carlson first. And if that's the case, then that's perfectly fine. We all have a self motive when it's all said and done. And then outside of that can be an extension of, our neighbors, etc. So let us continue.
Such as, was your nuclear program totally disabled by the bombing campaign by the U.S. government a week and a half ago? There's no chance he's going to answer that question honestly. I didn't bother to ask it. The answer, in fact, from an American perspective, even from the CIA's perspective, is unknowable. So we dispense with those, and I asked him very simple questions, such as, what is your goal? Do you seek war with the United States? Do you seek war with Israel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Again, the purpose of this was not to get to the absolute truth. That's impossible in an interview like this. The purpose of the interview was to add to the corpus of knowledge from which Americans can derive their own opinion. Learn everything you can, and then you decide. That's the promise of America.
I'm with that.
And we hope that this interview does a small part to making that promise real. This interview will be up as soon as we have done editing it, as noted, and that should be in a day or two.
Solid. So I guess first they're putting it behind the paywall, which again, I'm a capitalist. I believe do what you will with what you created. So you can visit his site and watch it before it is then publicized, I guess, to everybody else for free. I'm cool with that. And honestly, I am a fan of think for yourself, make your own mind up. Here is the information, right? I don't think we should filter any voices, but what I will say is this. And again, things are about to get extremely nuanced in the same way deep fakes and all that sort of nonsense is going to create a level of deceptive and coded sort of existence for us. It's going to get weird as hell. Like, it's going to get weird. I cannot lie about that. This is something I wish to God was not the reality, but things are going to get strange. What is real, what is not? I mean, how much footage of, war zones, etc., are you having to look 3-4 times at before you realize, oh, that's not real? How did you know? Maybe because it's a subtle glitch or something like that, or, people running it through these machines that even are getting it wrong. You have to get to a place where it is utter discernment. And that's why when it comes to like Candace, most people came to realization, yes, because she slipped up and she was really showing her emotions. Her emotions were getting the best of her. And we saw that this had to do more with her own ideological stances and her own conviction as far as, her hatred for this specific group of people, i.e. the Jewish population, even though she wouldn't say the words. The Groyper gang and then the Nick Fuentes is real simple. It's all the way out there. They're rage baiters. They want to monetize this. They know their audience, through and through. A guy like Tucker Carlson, again, that's why I decided to revisit this, and I will as often as necessary, is to say you have to use discernment. You have to read between the lines. You have to see where they're actually coming from until they give themselves a full slip up. Like there are moments like 2021 when there was a leaking of, some text messages sent from him to his colleagues. I think he might have still been a Fox. And he was just stating how he's so sick and tired of talking about Trump, like he can't stand him, blah, blah, blah. It's Tucker's own words. You can find it for yourself. And, his colleague agrees. Yeah, finally, we're not going to have to talk about him, etc. So that's the very same man who, not but a few years later, is standing next to Trump with a huge grin on his face. And this is not to say that many of these people aren't fakers, but I'm not one of those people who is okay with that, especially when somebody has a huge platform. I think the more of a platform you have, the more of a necessity there is for you to be absolute through and through, just wholehearted, authentic. Hey, I'm Tucker Carlson and I hate Donald Trump. Say it. There may be people who hate you for it, don't like you for it, etc., but at least you stand on what you stand on. Again, I have a bias towards Israel in comparison or, towards the Jewish population than I do towards Islam. As far as ideologies go, right? Judaism as opposed to Islam. Because one believes that in order to usher in their own savior, they must completely destroy and eradicate everything unlike it. They must destroy us in America. That's why they have a statement, a phrasing such as death to America. There's no nuance about that. They have shown you who they are. They have shown it time and time again. They are the colonizer, the ones who see themselves as a true apartheid state. I'm going to do a video on this in a little bit, but, there was a black man who lives, or at least lived in Gaza, or quote unquote Palestine. And he said that there is an area where a majority of the black Arabs or black people live there. And it's called the slave quarters in their own language. That's what it translates to in English, the slave quarters. These are people who openly still believe in slavery, at least their doctrine says so. And so let's go to ideology. That's where freedom of speech really counts most. I think it's about ideology more than anything else, more than just ability to say, oh, you're stupid, you're dumb, or whatever else, right? It's to say, okay, I have these sets of ideas, you have those. That's why I believe in capitalism. which is even kind of, this coded word that was taken by the Marxist and flipped, twist, and reversed, and is actually used as almost an insult. So I'll say free market or free trade, right? I believe in a free trade system because it works, because it is better than the state runs everything and seizes control of, the environment, or the individuals are all in control together as a commune, a kumbaya. It's never worked. There's always going to be a hierarchy. There's going to be rules that have to be in play. And how do we have as much freedom within the context of that as possible? As opposed to seizing people who are having too much. So basically, you're telling me that the person who works harder or who does more, or, creates something that the market rewards, needs to be punished for doing so. And then you, who might be doing absolutely nothing, me, who might be doing absolutely nothing, deserves to have what is that person's. Idea doesn't work. And so that's what I challenge all of us to continue to get into, right? I'm going to take the time to actually listen to the interview and break it down as best as I can when it is out to the public. I'm not about to pay for this thing. I'll be honest with you. I'm not about to pay. I'm not about to put money in the Tucker's pocket. Me personally, I've become a non-believer. I was never a fan of his. I'll be honest with you. There was always something there about him. But now, as far as what I have seen and what I have peeped and my own personal discernment, again, you use your own. I'm not going to tell you hate the man. I use my own personal discernment. I feel there's something off about this man who claims to just be, for the sake of journalistic integrity. You should feel the same way about me as far as discern. Who am I? Am I telling the truth? Why should you believe me? Don't. Go out there, do the research for yourself. Simple. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace.
I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 365, that's a full rotation. I see you looking up. You know them constellations. Constantly gazing like house of praises. You get to praising.